proud Mancunian and world-renowned architect has recorded this. Lord Foster for us. Have a little look.
This has to be one of the most exciting projects in the world today. It starts with the most famous football club in the world, 1 billion followers globally. So it starts with the fans. And it starts with the idea of making something which is so intense, it brings you close to the pitch. Acoustically, it cultivates the roar. As you move away from the stadium, it's not a fortress surrounded by a sea of cars. It's open, and it's contained by an umbrella that harvests solar energy, harvests rainwater, but it's protective, and it encloses arguably the largest public space in the world. It's welcoming, it's open, it's at the very heart of a new neighbourhood. And then it's part of the city of Manchester, the fastest growing city in the United Kingdom. A city, again, like no other. It's a powerhouse, steeped in history. Trafford Park was the industrial heartland of the nation, a heritage which I have a personal connection to. My father was a factory worker at Metropolitan Vickers. And then the three masts, the Trident, visible from 40 kilometers, 200 meters high. So this becomes a global destination. Normally, a stadium would take 10 years to build. We half that time, 5 years. How do we do that? By prefabrication, by using the network of Manchester Ship Canal, bringing it back to a new life, shipping in components, 160 of them, Meccano-like, and then we rebuild the Old Trafford station, and that becomes the pivot, the processional way to the stadium, welcoming and at the heart of a new sports-led neighbourhood. It's walkable, it's well served by public transport, it's endowed by nature, it learns from the past, it creates streets, it's a mixed-use mini-city. So what makes a global destination? What makes something so special? It's teamwork. It's the best brains, the civic leaders, the owners, the consultants, the engineers, the architects, the fans. The list is so long. It's a team effort. That is the heart of the success of this project.
Thank you very much to Norman Foster for that video. What an inspiring film that is, and clearly shows the size and scale of this project. The ambition and vision is clear, and after watching that and listening to both Jim and Seb, I'm sure everyone in the room is excited about what can be achieved in this next phase. And to hear more about how we can deliver this ambition, I would like to welcome Sir Jim back up onto stage, along with Seb and Manchester United CEO Omar Barada. Welcome, Omar, as well. Thank you guys for joining me up on stage. Well, that's the best place to start, Jim. That is incredible.
It is.
I'm sure you've seen it so many times, that video, but it's still inspiring every time you do see it. And it has been a journey to get to this point. Tell us more in detail how you arrived at this decision.
Well, it was. I mean, it just started from the point that we needed a stadium which befitted the stature of Manchester United and Manchester United. I mean, obviously, there's a degree of bias because I was brought up in Manchester. I've always been a fan of Manchester United, but I think it is the greatest football club in the world. It's certainly the most well-known football club in the world, and it needs a stadium of that stature, I think. It's more challenging, obviously, to build a stadium of 100,000, but I think the UK needs a stadium of that sort of presence, and the north of England, I think, is the best place to build it. And I just think it will become recognised throughout the world.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, that will also help Manchester United, obviously.
The design is absolutely incredible. Seb, of course, you've mentioned it before. You led the task force on the project and you produced a detailed options report to the club and to local government executives. Can you talk us through the process of that and how you arrived then at the conclusions of the report?
Yeah, I mean, in simple terms, the task force represents all that is good in Manchester. It's across the business community, it's clearly the political leadership of Manchester and the executive teams. We've got 2 vice-chancellors from local universities. We've got people who are really steeped in urban planning, but have also held us all and the club to a very, very high set of standards. I made the point just a few moments ago that the one thing that is often overlooked is that the most important group of people that you are ultimately responsible to are, yes, obviously the fan base of any sporting organisation that you're seeking to make adjustments to, but also the community that you're putting that in. I mean, neighbourhoods, people, networks. And so we did a lot of work with the fans, and actually the chair of the Manchester United fan group is on the board, Duncan. But we also went out of our way to really understand what local communities were saying. And I can tell you, I'm going to put a bit more meat on the bones, we surveyed over 1,200 people in different groups and very carefully identified as people that really this project would have an impact on. And the overwhelming response was everything from carbon footprint through to green spaces, through to meaningful, sustainable jobs, housing, the creativity around a second and third generation business base, and the recognition that the area could really be turbocharged through the focal point being the football club and the ambition of the task force. I hope I'm not speaking on behalf of the task force today in a way, but I think every one of us would agree that we just got more excited as the project developed and the ambition got bigger, and the recognition that we had a real responsibility to create and carve out some options that would survive when the rubber hit the road.
Well, it looks amazing, as I said. And Omar, thank you for joining us on stage. How important is this project for the future that you and your team are building at Manchester United?
Yeah, very important, clearly. It's our ambition, as you heard, is to have the best football teams, men and women's, playing in the best stadium. And I would add, the most iconic football stadium. As you know, we're working very hard to get our finances in order in the best position possible so that we can invest both on the talent in the pitch as well as our infrastructure. So we've started that with the project in Carrington, which will be open this summer. It'll be a state-of-the-art training facility. But back to the stadium, a new stadium as part of the wider regeneration project for us would be a game changer. As you know, we have the biggest stadium in the Premier League, but we still can't accommodate for all the fans that want to come in because we have the most demand. So we'd like to be able to build a 100,000 capacity stadium to accommodate all the fans, to give them the best experience, to create the best atmosphere for our fans and for our players, and also to give opportunities to our partners to be able to integrate their brands and their products in a way that's quite meaningful. So all in all, I think this will make a massive difference for the club. Very excited about it. Certainly.
Thank you, Omar. Jim, do you have an idea of timeline at this stage? Lord Foster speculated that it could be halved. How do you achieve that? How's it done?
I think there are 2 comments to make on timeline. The first one is that it starts with a discussion with... It depends how quickly the government get going with their regeneration programme, because we underpin a regeneration programme, and it's a fundamental part of the government's commitment to regenerate that area. So, in a way, it depends how quickly the government... I mean, I think they want to get going quite quickly because they want to see progress in this term. So I'm assuming that will go well and it will go quickly. The second part of the answer is that it will be a modular build. There'll be an immense amount of work for the for the local people of Manchester. But the modules, which you heard Norman Foster talk about, means that we can build the stadium much more quickly. So there are yards in the world which specialise in building very large structures, which are then shipped to locations around the world. And we have an example of that in Antwerp at the moment, where we're building probably the largest petrochemical facility that's been built for the last 50 years, and it's been built in Abu Dhabi and Indonesia and Thailand, and the components are being shipped in, and they weigh 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 tonnes each. And they come in by ship, and then they're wheeled in on these extraordinary sort of vehicles with a lot of wheels. And we will do the same thing. And the thing that allows us to do that, of course, is the Manchester Ship Canal. If we didn't have the Manchester Ship Canal, we wouldn't be able to do that. So that halves the time. I think normally if you were building a stadium of 100,000 brand new from ground up in an area that also needs to be regenerated, it's a 10-year project. But I think if we get going with the government, and I know they're enthusiastic to get going quickly, then I think it's a 5-year project, not a 10-year project. It's got those two provisos.
That's amazing. Omar, clearly there's still feasibility work to do, but at this early stage, how do you think the plans can be financed?
Yeah, as you say, it's still quite early, and also as a PLC, we can't speculate too much about the funding. But what I would say is the new stadium as the centrepiece of the wider regeneration project is a very attractive investment opportunity. So we're quite confident that we'll be able to find a way to finance the stadium.
OK, thank you, Omar. Seb, clearly there's a massive opportunity, not just for the club. You've all touched on it, for the community and the region. Can you talk more about the economic impact of the project?
Yeah, I can. The one point that I would make, it wasn't the toughest negotiation with Jim when he asked me to do this, but one of the things I really wanted to make clear at the beginning is that I wanted to really, and the task force was very keen, to make sure that we were unlocking economic, social impacts that went way beyond the curtilage of the football stadium. Jim's right. If you have if you're not careful, then you basically only have a new stadium and the rest becomes a housing project. But the interlocking parts here are really important. And one of the best examples of that is the work that we're currently doing about moving the freight yards from one side of the stadium. That's not just for ease of access and allowing us to optimise the curtilage of the land. It also frees up everything from housing opportunities, business opportunities. It moves freight off passenger routes in that part of the northwest, commuter routes as well. And it's really important because the work that Oxford Economics have done for us has really identified, and we really pushed them on this, that we wanted this also to have a regional impact, both in supply chains and all the sorts of things that you have to have together, the operational integration that goes into the development of a site like that. So simply moving the freight allows us, or allows government to meet its freight targets. It will actually add to the ecological advantage of the local area, certainly emissions as well. And allows us to absolutely tap into and unlock other opportunities like fresh housing and new business opportunities. So that is just one example of why the thinking around the stadium is so much bigger than simply the delivery of a world-class stadium, much that it is needed.